Hello and welcome to the WeLEAP Enlightening Talk series. I am Durgesh Chandel. I am the founder of the campaign WeLEAP. And today we have Dr. Cristina Riso. She is an assistant professor in the School of Aerospace Engineering at Georgia Institute of Technology. Christina's research focuses on developing computational models and analysis tools to study aeroelastic phenomena for the next generation aerospace vehicles. Dr. Riso has also been working as a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Michigan. She was a research fellow in the Airbus-Michigan Center for Aero-Servo-Elasticity of very flexible aircraft. She has also been active in technical communities. She serves on the AIAA Structural Dynamics Technical Committee and is also a member of the third Aeroelastic Prediction Workshop for the Large Deflection Working Group. So with that, I am excited to have Dr. Cristina Riso today with us. We will be going through some specific parts of her journey throughout her career, and we'll also be finding out some tips and advice for fellow women in aerospace who are aspiring for faculty career or a long-term research career. So with that, Cristina, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. She's joining us from Italy, so let's give a shout out to that. So welcome, Cristina, over to you.
Thank you for the introduction and thank you for the invitation. It's really a pleasure to be part of this series and I really look forward to the conversation today.
Yeah, such a pleasure to have you. Thank you. So I would start with the most fundamental question for today that I'm curious about. How was your background when you were growing up and what inspired to get into aerospace?
Yes, thanks for the question. So I would say that my interest in aerospace started when I was a kid, even though at that time I wasn't interested in the part of aerospace that I ended up working on. I had a period as a kid when I was very obsessed with dinosaurs, like many kids. And just after that, I really became very interested in space exploration, and I was fascinated by the ability to discover so much about other parts of the universe, other galaxies, other planets, and so on. So I had that kind of interest as a background, but I wasn't sure at that time what kind of career was exactly bringing to that point and what kind of education did you have to pursue to be able to get a career in that field. And as I was growing up through high school, I really excelled in scientific subjects, especially math. So as I was completing my high school degree, it was pretty clear to me that I would have picked some kind of a scientific major moving forward in college, but I wasn't really sure which one to pick. I considered the pure math, astrophysics, aerospace engineering, which I discovered that existed in the meantime, and eventually I decided, mainly looking at what kind of courses I would take in the first few years. So the courses that I would see in the aerospace degree sort of connected back to that childhood interest in space systems, space exploration. So I thought, okay, there seemed to be a decent amount of math, which is something I'm good at, and it maps back to those interests that I had from a long time. So I decided to try that route, and eventually it worked pretty well for me, even though I ended up not working on the space side of aerospace. But as I was going through my college degree, I then shifted toward the more aeronautics focused topics, which is what I currently work on.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's interesting. So I am curious about how supportive was your family and the close circle, and like how familiar was like people in your close circle with the STEM education, and did they support you, or were there any concerns about you choosing a STEM degree?
Yes, so in my family and also extended family, I was very lucky to have a supportive environment, because even though I don't have an aerospace engineer or even an engineer at all in my whole family, they were extremely supportive of whatever path I would decide to do. So they never gave me the impression that they didn't think it was good for me, or that I would not able to succeed. One concern that came up when I decided to study aerospace engineering is that there are not, I mean, there are opportunities in Italy, which is where I'm from, but there are many more opportunities in other places, such as the United States, which is where I ended up going. So that is something that I remember was a concern, but it wasn't related to my ability to succeed in that field. It was more related to the idea that I may end up going to a different country and work abroad. I remember that in my other people that I knew outside my family, like some friends that I had at the time, or other people that I know, some of them were not super supportive, in the sense that there were some people that told me, oh, you're not practical enough to be an engineer, because there is this stereotype that an engineer is only a person that is extremely good at doing practical things, but a large part of engineering is also theory, computation, experiments. All these things are all equally important, and you can find your spot to be to contribute to the field. So that is something that um, it didn't discourage me. If anything, it sort of reinforced my commitment to pursue that route, because I've always been the kind of person that gets even more interested in doing something when I'm told, no, you're not gonna be good at that, you shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
But I remember that it was it's something that came up, because there is a certain stereotype that of what people think is an engineer or an aerospace engineer, and to some people I seemed too theoretical, someone who was only quoted good at studying on books, which is also something that you have to do to succeed, by the way. So that is something that came up, and but it wasn't from my family, so I felt really fortunate on that side, because of course having family support and the close both close and extended family support makes a huge difference, feeling that those people feel you can do it, and they don't put boundaries with respect to what you should or should not do for a degree or for a career.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, because at that age, when we are young, of course, motivation helps, but support from family and friends and close circle also matters a lot. So that's good that at least your close circle was very supportive. So yeah, and so you mentioned a little bit about your vision during the high school, that you knew that you want to go in a STEM, but you were not clear like what exactly. So when did you decide that you really want to go in aerospace only? Was it in high school or after that?
It was in high school, because in Italy you have to apply to a specific degree. So you can switch later, especially at the beginning. Many engineering degrees share a number of classes that are common. So you can switch from aerospace to mechanical or to other fields later. But I applied directly to aerospace engineering, and eventually I decided at the very end of my high school um, time. So when I was finishing up the last year of high school, I was still evaluating, but then in the last few months of high school, I decided to apply for aerospace, and I never changed my mind. I never regretted the choice. But I even at that time, for the first few years, I wasn't sure what kind of career I would pursue eventually. But I did enjoy the subjects and learning more about aerospace topics, and kind of narrowing down what was the area that I was both more interested in and also better suited for throughout my college degree.
Yeah. So one more question related to your undergrad program. So I'm guessing that aerospace engineering might not have been one of the core streams in Italy. Like, for example, I come from India, and when I was growing up, mostly people were talking about computer science, electrical engineering, and there were a lot of jobs for those things. And so how, like, what was your biggest struggle when you joined the undergraduate program? And I'm asking about, yeah, like, of course, job prospects and all, but also, were there enough women in your class? How was it? Like, what were your major struggles?
Yes, so that's a good question. I wasn't too concerned about career options, especially at the beginning, because it seemed still far in time. And in Italy, most people tend to do both a bachelor's degree and a master's degree. So I was planning to attend university at least for 5 years. So the moment where I would have to really choose for the first job, for example, seemed very far, and I wasn't too concerned about that. I think some of the the most challenging parts, especially of the first couple of years, is that one, for sure, that coming from high school, we come from a relatively small class. And especially if we are among the top students in the class, your comparison group is only those few people that you meet throughout your high school. But when you come to an undergraduate program, especially the first few classes where the class is very big, and suddenly everybody is smart because you are doing a very selective degree, and there's plenty of people who are super committed and super smart. So that was a little intimidating. In part because there were many talented people, so I felt both intimidated and also challenged in a good sense, in the sense that I felt that I had to push myself further to be of the same level with other people. And something that also was intimidating for me is that there were many people who were completely sure about what kind of career they would want to pursue in aerospace, and they wanted they already knew that they wanted to be aerospace engineers since like they were very little. So I felt I mean, I was interested in the field, but I didn't feel like I was that sure about career options, that sure about aerospace engineering being the college degree that I would pursue when I was a kid. So I felt intimidated by other people that were that seemed more confident than I was at the time. And I guess looking backwards, that's also fine. I mean, there are some people who are very sure about what career they want to pursue. They start on one path and they follow that path until the end. And there are other people that have a career path that is more wavy in a sense. So you evolve with time what you're interested in and what you want to pursue. Another thing that was especially I don't know how much it is different with other degrees abroad, but the Italian undergraduate program is a little unstructured in the sense that, for example, when you take a class, you don't have as many assignments during the class or midterm exams. Typically, you have a final exam at the end, which means there are a full semester. There is a full semester in which you attend class, but you don't have feedback until the end. So it is very it is good if you are self-driven because you have flexibility to choose how you want to study. If you want to study a little bit at a time, you want to study all at the end, or you want to study in any way that works best for you. But it can be very you can feel not confident because you miss the validation of, for example, having an homework assignment that is returned with a good grade second week of class, or having a midterm exam that goes well, so you have that feedback about how you're doing. You have to wait until the end, or at least this is the way it worked when I took the degree. It might have changed, but that was a little challenging because even though I enjoyed the flexibility because I liked that I was able to choose how to study, I didn't know if I was studying well enough until the end. So that was also always a source of uncertainty, knowing whether I really nailed the class and the concepts, or if I wasn't, because I didn't know until I took the final exam, basically, for every exam.
Yeah, that's very unique, I will say, because I've never heard of those things, like giving the only feedback at the end of the semester. It's a little bit challenging because all we learn about here in US is about getting more frequent feedback.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a good sense of your performance and you can improve. So yeah, it must have been challenging, and I hope it's
Yeah.
changed now.
Yeah, it's the master degree is more like that. It's more like there are projects, there are assignments, there are reports, there are evaluations at different points. The undergrad, at least when I took the classes, most classes had there were exercises that were assigned, but there was never like a feedback on that. So it was challenging to understand if the method that I was using to study, or the way I was approaching problems was good. So that was definitely something that felt every exam felt intimidating in that sense, even though I started collecting data points that exams were going well. So you will feel that now a person feels more confident, but then every subject is also different from another. So every exam I felt like I was basically restarting from scratch in terms of my self-confidence with respect to studying a new topic.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because that helps everybody listening to this conversation to appreciate like how much a continuous and frequent feedback matters.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope the students listening to this can appreciate their regular exams much more after hearing this. Also, thanks for sharing about your intimidation in the beginning, like when you just joined as an undergrad in one of the most reputed universities in Italy, and then everybody was super smart. And like when you are put in between those people, sometimes there is like this feeling of, am I enough? And so many of us go through that. So thank you for sharing that, so that we can understand that I'm not the only one. We all go through
Yeah.
that, and it really helps, like the way you took it as a constructive thing and as a challenge to make yourself better, and that's how we succeed. So thank you for sharing that. uh, and so I noticed that you also stayed in the same university for
Mm-hmm.
your PhD program. So then how was the experience during PhD? Because you were like familiar with the university itself. So were there any additional challenges or any achievements? Tell us a little bit more.
Yes. So as you said, I stayed in the same university for all my degrees. So I was very familiar with the program, the department, the different people, and I really enjoyed working with my advisor. That was also my undergrad thesis and master thesis advisor. So I didn't even change person that I was working with. So that definitely made the things easier, because whenever you start a new relationship with a new advisor, or you start a new experience in a different environment, there is always a little bit of adjustment time before you find your habits, you find your people. So I didn't have that difficulty when I started. Something that was a little challenging was just to understand how research works, in the sense that when you take classes or you study, you have very clear milestones, which are the same for everybody. You take a class, everybody has to take some sort of evaluation. In the end, you know what score is good, what score is bad, if you fail the class, if you pass the class, if you learn the topic. And that is very clear, and it's the same for everybody. But research is not like that, because milestones are less defined.
Yeah.
Most of them, it's milestones that you define for yourself. Like, for example, you decide that you want to submit a paper for a certain conference or for a certain journal publication, or you decide that you want to take, I don't know, a workshop or a new class just to enhance your research experience, your knowledge of topics that you need for your research. But all of these things are things that you decide. No one is gonna decide for you, or no one tells you how to do in a good way. So that is very, it takes time to just understand that, for example, you have an idea, try to do something and it doesn't work, and you try in a different way and it still doesn't work. But it may be harder to see the progress in that, but in reality, every failed experiment, every failed like computational attempt or theory manipulation is still progress, in the sense that you know what doesn't work, and eventually you keep trying and you will find out what does work for what you're trying to do. But it's easier to see that now after a few years of experience in research than it was at the time. At the time I wasn't sure what was good, what was bad, and it's also hard to compare, because even though you have a cohort of people in the same PhD program, every PhD is unique. You cannot really compare your experience. I mean, in a sense, it is easy to make comparisons and, for example, feel I don't know, that person has already published a paper, or that person has already received this award, or this recognition, or that person is already ahead of where I am with my research. But you cannot really compare, because every work, every PhD research involves different skills, and it's impossible to compare, but you feel like making comparisons where you are in the program. So that was something that was hard, especially at the beginning. And the other thing is that I was very scared of speaking in public. Like, I was a person that when I attended classes, I will never speak, like under any circumstance, never asking a question in front of other people, because I was very scared. And when you get to a PhD program, at the very least, you have to give some kind of annual presentation to some people, and then you want to go to conferences, and then you want to speak, to talk to other people who do research in your field. And that is something that I was totally uncomfortable with. So that was a real challenge, because I knew it was important. I knew that it was so much not me, and I knew that somehow I still had to do it in a decent way anyway. So that was another challenge that I faced. I mean, it gets better with time, even though it's not like you completely solve. If you are intimidated by speaking in front of people, it's not something that you completely overcome. You just learn to ignore the feeling and do things anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I can totally relate, because one of the main things I worked on myself in my PhD was about asking questions. And as you said, I was also like, I will have all these great questions, but I would be shy in front of speaking, like in a big crowd. I will think like, maybe it's like very obvious question, and I'll approach these speakers later on, and they will be like, oh, it's an excellent question. Why didn't you ask this during the conference or the seminar? It would have benefited everybody. And I'm like, okay, maybe I should work on that. So yeah, as you said, like it's a continuous process, and most of us, like those who grew up as an introvert person, or like, just minding our own business, busy in studies but not that busy in like communicating about it, it becomes a challenge. But of course we can overcome it with practice. So thank you for sharing that. And also about the thing you said about every PhD topic being a unique topic. That's so true. And of course you can't like compare two PhDs because some PhD problems take almost 1.5 to 2 years to just figure out what the problem is, and just to develop a methodology. And then for some other PhD topics, you can start producing results after a year or so. So that's totally relatable. Okay, so and so when did you decide about like being a professor?
Yes, so I decided quite late. It was actually not during my PhD, it was during my postdoc. So I decided to do a postdoc, even though at the time I wasn't considering to become a professor, because I was very interested in a research project that became available. And during my PhD, I spent some time as a visitor at the University of Michigan, which is the university where I came back for my postdoc. So I really enjoyed that experience that I did while I was doing my PhD in Italy, and I wanted to come back and maybe stay a few years more at Michigan and get experience on some other topic still related to my work in aeroelasticity, but maybe a different flavor in a different environment. So when I was finishing up my PhD, my postdoc PI, which was also the same person that I had visited during my PhD, had some opportunities for postdoc, so I asked him about that, and it matched well with my interests and also with the timeline, because that position became available just when I was wrapping up my dissertation. So it was a very good combination of time match and interest in what I wanted to study further. And it was an industrial project, so I also thought it was a good opportunity in case I wanted to get an industry job later, because it was an academic postdoc in a university, but there was a strong interaction with industry, which is something that I really enjoyed throughout the postdoc, and I saw as an opportunity to keep my options open. And then when I started the postdoc, it was I had the opportunity to, in a sense, see the faculty life from closer, because when I was doing my PhD, I was mainly working on my research topics, but as a postdoc, I also got the opportunity to occasionally help with class-related matters and supervise other students, which are all components of the job that a professor has, for example. And I really enjoyed that a lot. So I started considering maybe I should learn more about what a professor actually does as all the components of the job, and how to get a position in that role. So I talked with my PI at the time, and he was supportive of the idea. So he gave some suggestions about other experiences that I could have, for example, helping with writing proposals or just making more connections in the field, because I was interested in a position in the United States, but I stayed in the United States only for my postdoc. So I had less time, in a sense, to develop my US network. So he had the suggestions for how to get more involved in the field with other people, and also how to better prepare for applying for positions. So I waited. I decided that I would apply at the beginning of my second year as a postdoc, and I waited one more year to apply, just to get more experience on one side, and also to prepare for applying, because preparing the materials and preparing, knowing where you want to apply and why may take a little bit of time if you want to do a very tailored job search for academic positions. So I waited a little bit. It was just in time for COVID to happen when I went on the job market. So a lot of the preparation that I did was tailored toward, for example, in-person campus interviews and these kind of things that I didn't get to do because it was COVID time when I ended up applying. But it was good. I felt the postdoc experience really helped me to gain more confidence, and also clear my mind about where I wanted to be and why. And in the end, it worked well for me for finding a position.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So I'm also curious about, like you said, your postdoc advisor was very supportive and very helpful in terms of, like preparing you for a faculty position. Did you also have any other mentors, and how did you, develop your US network, and how did you actually prepare for your like faculty application material? Did you attend specific workshops or other things? So yeah, tell us a little bit more.
Yes, so my preparation actually started from that conversation that I had with my postdoc PI, because he lended me a book that is called Tomorrow's Professor, It's actually a pretty good book that it's focused on the sciences and engineering. So it was written some time ago, but in the end, I mean, the main aspects of the process haven't changed as much. So it was good because it explained all the components of the job search and how to prepare, and also some suggestions about how to get started on the job in a good way, and further references. So it was, I read that book, and that also triggered my mind about I can approach this job search problem like any other engineering problem, basically digging in the literature, searching for information on books, websites, articles, and so on. So I actually prepared a lot by reading books on there are plenty of books like on faculty life, faculty applications, a lot of good articles written online. So that was a big help for me, because there's some good resources out there. And also I attended some of the future faculty programs that exist at some universities. Like, for example, there is one that was called the Women in Aerospace Symposium at the time, and now is called the Rising Stars in Aerospace. That happens every year, and they explain all the components. They have panels, and they explain all the components of the applications. There is also a similar event that was at Michigan. There is one big event that is called an XProf, that is only for US citizens and US persons. But there is also at Michigan a smaller event that is just one day, that is open to everybody at Michigan. So I attended that had also more panels and some presentations about, again, the different components of the application process and how to tailor the materials. And also another one that was organized at Northeastern, that is called New England Future Faculty Workshop, that also had a peer review circle, in the sense that they subdivided the people that were participating in peer review groups, and you shared application materials with each other. And that was very helpful for me, because I got paired with people that were in scientific fields, but not in my field. So I got really good feedback from those people that was different from the feedback that I would get from aerospace people, for example, because they didn't know as much about the topic. So they were mainly commenting on understanding why a certain research problem is important, why it hasn't been done before, these kind of questions that are very similar to the questions that someone in a search committee that is not in the same field as you are may have. So that those experiences were very helpful, just to refine the materials. And even though they get repetitive to some extent at some point, because the topics are always the same, just because the people who are involved in these workshops are different, you get to learn something new, because everybody has a different experience through the job search, both good experiences and bad experiences. So even if these workshops are very similar, in the end, you still learn something new, just because there is a new person talking on a panel, or a person that has a different perspective. So if people are interested in this kind of career, I would encourage to basically take advantage of all these kind of opportunities, because they are not they don't repeat themselves. So you always learn something new, just because you talk to someone who had a new experience that made them share a new tip that you don't know, and in the end you can collect all these things and find what is the mix that works for your specific case, which is going to be some combination of what has worked for other people in a maybe slightly modified way.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly true. And I can relate to that. To our audience, I will just mention this, that Cristina and I, we met in Women in Aerospace Symposium, which was held at MIT in 2019. And there are very few women in aerospace leadership and highly qualified positions. So it really helped us to connect through that network, and stay connected even afterwards. And also I I would mention this, like attending workshops like these really tells you what is out there. And like, so I was a postdoc, like I was still doing my PhD when I attended the symposium, and I was not sure, if I can be a professor, if I should attend these workshops, but I attended it anyway, and it really helped me like rethink about, oh, maybe I can try for faculty positions. And thanks for also mentioning about the Northeastern University Future Faculty Workshop. I highly recommend to our audience listening to this, like there are other similar workshops also, like for example, at MIT, we have Path of Professorship program. And I attended that in November 2021, and it was really effective and gave me a lot of resources. So definitely, like go into these activities and at least see how where you stand, what you can improve if you are interested in the academic career.
Yeah, and if I just add on top of that,
Mhm.
one goal, if one wants to get a professor position, one goal is to get the position. But after you get that, it's not like life is over at that point. You still have a complete career to develop, or even if you decide that you don't want that career anymore and you go and do something else, those connections that you make through those experiences of people who have similar interests. Some of these workshops target specific groups, like for example, women in aerospace, or other categories that are underrepresented in aerospace. So it's a good experience anyway, even for people that are not completely sure if they want to pursue that route, because you meet people that have similar interests, similar backgrounds and identities, and then you stay connected and you kind of see bump into each other over time in other places, in other experiences that you do. So it's definitely valuable regardless of whether a faculty career works out, or if you decide that you don't want that career anymore and you decide to do something else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would also mention that universities which are in the top tier, like for example MIT, Stanford, Harvard, and like University of Michigan, all the top universities have a lot of activities going on to support their PhDs and postdocs to preparing them for like long-term research career, maybe it in the industry or faculty jobs. But some and in some developing countries or underdeveloped countries, people still don't have access to these kind of resources, and that is one of the main reasons we have founded this WeLEAP Aerospace campaign, like where we are having these conversations which will be available to a broader community. And my hope is that everybody listening to this at least get a window of like what kind of resources are available and what are the main takeaways. So hope everybody learns after listening to this.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah. Okay. So you talked about your postdoc. So one like when you are applying for a faculty position, usually one of the main things is how to develop your research vision. So would you tell a little bit about how you like thought of, okay, this particular problem I would like to work on as a faculty?
Yes, so I think it has to start from or at least one way is to start from what you're already doing and try to see what is the next step starting from that, because it is I think it is important to get the right balance between not being too similar to what you already did or will do in the very short near future, and not being something that is completely starting from scratch, because that is not also it can be very hard to convince someone that one is the right person to do a particular research if you have, for example, no background in that, or no previous publications or no previous experiences regarding that topic. So I think some advice that I was given is to think about two or three projects or areas that one will want to pursue. And maybe one is very related to what is the current research or previous research that one has done. One is sort of in between, like it is related, but it's maybe a little less related and less defined, and something else can be something that is related in the same area, but maybe something that is new, and it can be not sorted out to the same level of detail of the others, because that demonstrates that you have some ideas, and it doesn't matter if the ideas change, by the way, like after 1 year that one applies, or after even a few months, you can start a new line of research that wasn't in the research statement, and that is totally fine. It's not, it's more to demonstrate that you have ideas, you can write them down in a way that a person can understand, especially a person who has not the same background and is not as deep in the topic, and make it rooted in something concrete, like previous work or existing knowledge, and show what can be done that is new, and what is the value of that. So I would, something that at the beginning especially I was struggling with was feeling like this is my plan for the future. I have to write a plan that I can stick to the plan, and is perfect, so I don't have to change that. And I don't think it should be perceived that way. It's more about having some ideas that expand on the field. They are important, and showing why they are important, and communicate that you know the relevance of the work. You can convince someone else that that work has to be done, and you are the person that can do that, especially at a specific place. So another aspect that has to be considered, or at least that I considered, is trying to think what are the places where it makes sense to do that research. Because, for example, you can be one can be as good as one can be, but if a particular university or department already has 5 people working on the same topic, it's a very hard sell, because it's hard to show what is the new aspect that one brings, and what is the what will be the gain of the department, for example, if that new person comes, what they can do with you that they cannot do without you. So that is, it's something that requires some thought. So definitely it takes some time, and it also depends on what level of tailoring one wants to go about applications. I was kind of selective in the number of places I decided to apply, because I felt that some places made sense for me, other places did not make sense. So I didn't want to, in a sense, commit time to developing a strategy and a research plan that I felt wasn't appropriate for a particular place, because maybe there weren't people with similar interests, or maybe there weren't I don't know, good connections in the area, or whatever it is that may make a particular research not being suited to a place. But that also depends on many things. I was fortunate that I was on a funded project that wasn't ending in the short term, so I could. I was fine with the idea that if I was selective in where to apply and it didn't work out, I would stay, for example, in a postdoc longer. But that is something that may not be the case for everybody. So it's not there is no one solution for everyone. It really depends on what kind of research one does, what are the interests that one has with respect to what percentage of research teaching service one wants to have in a faculty position, and also where you want to be, which people you want to collaborate with. So that there are many variables. So it's important to take some time to at least understand what kind of search one wants to do. Does one want to apply to 100 places or to 10 places? It makes a huge difference in the way you want or can prepare the materials, because of course you cannot put the same level of tailoring and detail in doing 200 applications, or in doing 20, or in doing 10. So those are choices that are very personal, and it's important to allow time to choose that and allow time to write the materials, because it does take some time. At least it took for me a few months to get them in a shape that I was happy sending around, and I felt it was decent to try. And it may vary with different people depending on how developed your vision is and how you are. It is easy for you to convey that on a written piece of paper.
Yeah. No, that's very helpful that you shared all that, because, like developing your research vision is really important. And also sometimes it might be the case that you are interested in that topic, but there is not enough funding options available, or there are not enough vacancies available in the universities to hire in that area. So it takes a lot of patience. I mean, preparing for a faculty job is a lot more than just being like good in your job and knowing your stuff. It's a lot more about like patience and keep preparing. So thank you so much for sharing. Uh, yeah, I was wondering, like, if you have any 2-3 main tips for our PhDs or postdocs aspiring for faculty career, like for the interviews, how they can be more, what should I say, more of how can they shine as a promising candidate in their interviews?
Yes, so something that I was surprised to discover through my first interview is that it's not an exam, it's not another PhD defense, which is how I expected it to be when I was preparing. And also, my first interview was at the very beginning of the pandemic, so it was a hyper stressful situation on top of the normal stress of the experience of what everybody was experiencing in many different ways. But something that I was expecting was that first people would basically examine me again on the like you are examined in a topic or when you defend your PhD thesis. So I was really stressed out about people basically, I don't know, wondering how would this person get a PhD, or why did we even invite this person to interview, kind of reaction to my interview. And that was actually not the case, not in that interview or not in any other interview that I had. So I was really, it was good to have the first experience because I realized that once you get to the interview stage, people are really interested in learning more about what you can bring to the place and just getting to know you, regardless of how the process goes after, because there are many factors that eventually go into a hiring decision, and it's not a reflection of the value of the research itself. There are many things that can play a role. Most of them are out of control. It's not something that you necessarily can influence, because if the department or the school decides, for example, to hire in another area, or to hire the following year and keep the spot for later, it's not something that you can necessarily make anything about. So I would definitely recommend to anybody to try to enjoy the process, and especially if you get to the stage of interviewing either virtually or in person. I did even the campus interviews that I did were all virtual because of the pandemic. So I didn't get that on-site campus interview experience. But even then, it was interesting just to have the opportunity to talk to those people, because those are still people in the field which are going to be there regardless of how the interview goes. So those are connections that know about your work and can maybe help you in the future, especially if you have some overlap in research. It's not out of the it's not difficult to imagine that maybe some people you will collaborate anyway, even if you go in a different place, or even if you don't go to a faculty position in the end. So try to live the process as an experience, an opportunity to meet people and make people know your work, and less as an exam or a PhD defense, because it's not like that. It's really people wanting to know you and to understand if you can be successful in a particular place, which doesn't depend, it's not depending on value. It depends on many things, such as collaboration, fit with colleagues, even what classes you can teach, because maybe there are 10 classes that the department needs someone to teaching you in the area that you're an expert on. So that is a very good plus that you can bring, but it's not something that you can do anything about. And maybe when you apply and you interview, you don't even know about what people need you to teach, on what kind of extra skills you can bring, because you don't really know many inside details of how a department envisions the next hire to be. And the other thing that I would advise is not to take the outcome personally. It's not to take the outcome personally, and also remember to interview people as they are interviewing you, because it's also even if you're offered a job, it's not like you have to necessarily take the job. Maybe you don't want the job because you discover a place that you don't like, or a place where you just see for whatever reason that you cannot be for a long period of time, or you cannot be happy. So that's also an opportunity to ask questions about the people that one meets with, and take that as an opportunity also to understand if what you need is in that place, which could be the department, or could be also the location, or could be any dimension of aspects that are necessary for you to envision a career in a university.
Yeah, you brought a very good point. Like, it's like a long-term career choice. So we have to think about everything related to our life. Like, will we be succeeding there in long term or not? So thanks. Okay, so thank you, Dr. Riso. This concludes the end of part 1 of our conversation today. And this session has been extremely informative. And I'm sure that the students, the postdocs, and women aspiring for faculty career will find a lot of useful advice in this conversation. So in the part 2, we will discuss more about the research projects ongoing in Dr. Riso's research lab at Georgia Tech. And that will be really helpful for all the students who want to work in that field. And we will also discuss about Christina's experience as a new faculty member, and we'll get a lot of tips there for all the new faculty members. So stay tuned with us for the part 2. Thank you, Christina. We'll see you in part 2.
Thank you.